For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
And now, from Pensacola, Florida, it's Within Reason with Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin.
All right, welcome to Within Reason, another sterling attempt to decipher the truth from all of the misinformation. Bob Kerrigan and
Bill Rankin, and both of us can't be right, so there's got to be some untruth here, and you decide who's the biggest phony.
You decide?
You decide.
Oh, they decide.
Well, I'll decide.
Oh, okay. Well, tonight we're going to talk about Amendment 8 and the grand cash grab by all the Republican hustlers who are in public education, including the entire Bush family, from what I recall about his derelict brother and others. It is a little harsh, just a tad harsh, but it's true about the Bushes. They've always wanted to take money away from public education for their buddies, and we'll talk about Amendment 8. And Bill, I know, has some strong feelings on the uproar in the Middle East.
Yeah, I do. And we've also got this tonight, if I got it right, is the rollout of the T-shirts, and you have to take the majority of credit or blame for the T-shirts when they show up.
It was a high honor. In fact, we could go, if the crew is awake in the other room, we could actually put on in a second here a picture of the T-shirts, and these T-shirts have.
There it is.
There is I think that is, according to the author, I think that's the front of the shirt, if I recall correctly.
And certainly that's not meant in any negative way.
Oh my goodness, look at the reverse of this thing. Speed trap in the red light district. That's not very complimentary, is it?
But what it means is that Gulf Breeze is unique. I mean, they're standing out by themselves and having red light cameras, which are offensive for a lot of reasons. Because you get snitch letters.
Could we build a big bridge in our new bridge? Build it over the top. You know how sometimes they'll build it over the top of a ghetto or an area that's economically depressed so that there's no hope of it coming back. You could build a bridge right over Gulf Breeze. Just go, and people could drive over the bridge and like toss out a beer can or something. You know, just like hey. Here's what you caused us to build here, as a bridge over your crappy little town. It'd be kind of neat. It'd be kind of a nice thing to do.
And why shouldn't we go through Gulf Breeze, just because it's a speed trap?
Well, it just not only a speed trap, but it's like going back to the 50s in terms of the governmental kind of operation of Gulf Breeze. It's very archaic and old-fashioned and very parochial, very protective of their own little fiefdom over there. You know, it's not a bedroom community. Now, this is kind of like a prison near adjacent to the greater metropolitan area of the city.
I mean, they wouldn't let you buy a house there if you wanted one?
Oh, you could.
Maybe not now.
No, not
after all this.
Well, not now. I couldn't buy a house there, and I think if you pass all of their tests of occupancy over there, and I won't go into any more depth about that. It's pretty obvious to everybody who's been through that little town that you might be able to buy.
Listen, if anybody's got enough money to buy a house over there, they'll sell it to you. I wouldn't be all that worried about that.
It's a wonderful place to go to if you like that sort of thing, and some people
I'm sure a lot of our viewers have had the experience that a lot of people I've talked to about the red light cameras heard about. You get a letter in the mail, and it says either pay up or snitch on whoever was driving.
We've been through that.
We've been through that.
You took a strong stand against that, and then you folded at the last minute. Yes, it cost me 2 trips to Tallahassee and a few $100s. And then you caved. I never did cave. You did.
I refused to accept it. I said, I'm here because I want to be heard about this. We heard. And the hearing examiner was just this great guy, and I really hadn't laid the foundation for for anything.
But then
he said, I'll go ahead and take it under advisement. You don't have to pay anything and see what the courts do about this. And I said, I really appreciate that. I'm done with it. I've made my point. I got to make a speech in front of a room full of people, which is always good.
2 trips to Tallahassee.
2 trips.
And a speech.
Yeah.
And then you wrote and paid the ticket.
Yeah, a couple
and
of
thanked them for the cameras. Or did you
no,
actually?
I didn't thank them for the cameras, but everybody involved, the hearing officer, it was just terrific. He was a very fair guy.
Did he apologize for the little city?
No, this wasn't the little city. This was Tallahassee.
Oh, Tallahassee.
The city of Tallahassee has red light cameras.
Oh, they do, yeah. And so Gulf Breeze and Tallahassee are very similar. One's a state capital, and one's something else, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And their only similarity apparently is they have red light cameras. Is that right? I mean, are there any other similarity between the two?
Why isn't Gulf Breeze the county seat, you think? I mean, that's where...
Because all the smart...
If it's based on having a high opinion of yourself, they'd certainly be the county seat.
A lot of the old counties like this have the...
Inland.
Have the inland, yeah.
They're on the old Highway 90.
Yeah, and because I think they were afraid that there'd be a hurricane and will wipe out the whole city or something, so they moved it
Yeah,
in.
that's right. I mean, if you go down the old Highway 90, that's where all the county seats are.
Well, I have some latest stuff here from Harper's. Are you ready?
Sure.
Well, this is very disturbing. We joke around a lot, but here's some things that are most disturbing to me. Chance that a death among U.S. service members is a suicide. What percentage?
It's a pretty high percentage. I don't know what it is.
20%.
Yeah.
Among military-age members of the general population, it's 1 in 20. But listen to this.
Yeah.
There's a portion of the service members who are under the age of 25. 1/3 of the whole force under age 25. Yeah. Of those who commit suicide, who are half.
Wow.
Right, under that age.
Wow.
Isn't that alarming? Isn't that alarming?
Well, another thing that's alarming is now your chances of being killed in Afghanistan apparently come from people in Afghanistan uniforms. I say, well, Al-Qaeda is infiltrating it. What are we doing there?
Well, we've asked that question rhetorically many times.
President Obama has never favored us with an answer.
He has not. All right, this was something I mentioned to you before we went on the air. Percentage change since 2007 in the portion of Spaniards who believe people are better off in a free market economy.
Yeah. Well, that has gone down by a great deal.
Minus 30.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, minus 30.
They mismanage their economy, spend all the money on public services and cronyism and the spoil system, and then say, it's that free market system isn't working for us.
And they blame the free.
Let's have more socialism. That'll help.
And you don't think there were any major deficiencies in their free market system at all?
In their free market system, I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
In the principle of free markets, absolutely not. It's the only thing that's ever worked.
Well, I know. I think.
I mean, command economies and the government running businesses like Obama wants to do. That doesn't work. It's no good.
Well, you say it's the only thing that ever worked, but it can't work unfettered, uncontrolled.
No, I don't think so.
No, it can't.
No, unregulated, no, because then you wind up with monopolies, which destroy the idea of the free market system,
of course.
for one thing. Nor, in our enlightened age, is any of us willing to allow people to starve in the streets or get run over by something and then say, well, you don't have any money, you can't go to the hospital. Just lie there and suffer. Try not to bleed too much. We're not going to do that.
In Cambodia, if there's a murder, they don't do anything unless someone files a complaint. Literally.
Really?
That's right. They just move the body.
See, some people who are so reviled that nobody would file a complaint.
Exactly.
You can murder them at will, like a target.
Like the town bullies. Remember the town bullies that get shot and nobody
files.
All right, how about this? Now, this is something you'll have to help us explain. The number of registered Pennsylvanians who may be prevented from voting by a new voter identification law. How many do you think it is?
Really? I don't know, 5%?
1,600,000.
What percent is that? You don't know?
I don't know. That's
a lot. Where does that come from? This is.
I'll get you the.
You're reading from the left side of the page there. No, these people are saying there's no voter fraud. How do you know that? How do you know people who are illegal aren't, just getting absentee ballots and mailing it in?
How did you know the next thing I was going to ask you about? The number of documented instances of voter impersonation fraud in Pennsylvania history.
1.
Too high.
Really?
0.
Yeah, well.
0. So the Republicans say, we've got to have this voter identification law because too many blacks and poor are voting.
No.
And they tend to vote Democratic.
Probably,
of course
that's the motive of the Republicans, to cut down the Democratic
How
vote.
many voters in
Probably
Philadelphia do you
is.
think this will affect?
I don't know.
40%.
Go on.
2 out of 5.
Don't have any ID?
No, this is a portion of those.
Yeah, but I mean, voter ID means you need some kind of picture ID.
Well, now be careful.
And 40%
Be
of the
careful.
people in
The problem-
Philadelphia don't have it?
The problem is it's a state-by-state determination of the
Right.
type and nature of, quote, identification
Yeah.
that you need.
Well, that's right. It's a
and
state
I
issue.
don't know what Pennsylvania is, but it's
That sounds, I mean, that, you know, is that...
it's not a left wing.
They must be getting faxes from the Obama campaign, putting it in there for you to read like it's some kind of objective stuff. Is
All
that
right.
it?
Now, here's
that's just, it's hard to accept.
I'll follow up and give you.
Because generally speaking, the voter ID, they allow
Yeah.
driver's licenses.
A lot of the poor don't drive.
Okay, but don't you have to have things with your picture on it to get some government services?
You get a utility bill if you need it for voter
No,
registration.
well-
To register, you have to register with some kind of identification of some kind of a thing from.
And then you just walk in and say, I'm that person that registered.
But here's
and
what-
then they got to take your word for it.
But here's what I want to. Of all of the things and problems we have in this country, why is there this concern, this heartfelt, total commitment by the Republican Party to clean up the voter registration rolls when the latest information we have, which came from some agency of the federal government, went to Texas, and I know the head guy in Houston has said, this is so preposterous on its face, they sent these notices to all these people who were alive and said, our records indicate you're dead, and unless you respond, you can't vote. And he said they found endless errors and confusion. But my question
Well, for one thing,
is,
if
why
it's
did
the
this all
Obama
start?
Department of Justice, I think it's suspect. That's just for openers.
Yeah. Okay.
And two,
okay. Yeah.
I agree with you that we have to suspect that the motives for all these Republican legislators is to suppress the vote among the people who are likely to vote Democratic. I mean, that seems pretty clear.
Sure. It's the same
However,
thing. Yeah.
The motive, but separate the motive from what it is. Requiring people as a condition of voting to come up with a picture ID doesn't seem that harsh, really. When in Florida, I know you can go get it for free or no cost. Just get an ID. Just prove to somebody that's who you are, not just. You know, Joe Smith registered. I'm Joe Smith. Well, how do you know?
Okay, I'm going to tell you something.
I'll tell you.
All right,
I swear I am.
You live in the poor, let's just assume hypothetically, you live in one of the poorest sections of the city, Philadelphia or whatever. And half of your neighbors are either arrested, in prison, or regularly stopped by the local police. Okay. And someone sends you a letter and says, you've got to go get ID and you have to have this certain identification to show up.
Yeah.
Wouldn't some people say, I think I'll just kind of blend into the background
Good point.
because I don't want to be high on anybody's profile.
Well,
looking for people.
that is a good point.
Yeah.
But I remind you, you have to go back no further than the civil rights movement, when the blacks were disenfranchised as recently as, say, the 60s, maybe into the 70s.
Right.
And in a lot of deep South communities, they couldn't vote no matter what. I mean, they'd show up and wait in line to register to vote, and they'd have all the proper ID and stuff. It didn't matter. They weren't going to, under one pretext or another, they're going to want them to allow them to vote. And these people were willing to suffer all kinds of terrible things for the right to vote. The people you're talking about are not willing to suffer whatever hardship you have to go through to get a free ID card. Come on. So the remedy is not to rail at the government.
Yeah.
I mean, all the people say, look, this is an important right. Do what you got to do. We'll put you in a bus and drive you over there to get your ID.
That's a decent argument. That is that you ought to have to assert some effort.
I mean, if I were the spokesman, I am obviously not the spokesman, for, let's say, the black community, I'd say, they're not gonna push us down. We'll just gather everybody up, and we'll go and we'll get our ID cards, and we'll go vote. It'll make us vote more.
It isn't just, I don't think we ought to focus just on the black community. I think this addresses the elderly and others who are largely dependent on government services and government benefits, whether it's Social Security or Medicare, whatever. They are more likely to vote Democratic than they are the hard-nosed Republicans who want to take everything from them and put them out in the street.
But
I mean, that's a Republican
if you divide people up into age groups, us old people vote.
Indeed.
Which is why we're getting all the good stuff from the government.
Some of the old white people vote, but I'm saying a large number of elderly people, nursing homes or whatever, who are dependent on government services are more likely to vote Democratic. And so the Republicans don't want them to vote.
Is that true?
I think it is true. That's my view.
Did you make that up?
True. Well, I just sort of shot a fact or two out there. That seemed logical to me at the time. I mean, we generally don't embarrass each other on this program.
Of course we do. That's the whole point of it.
Okay. All right, I want to go back to...
With respect, respectfully.
Respectfully.
You know,
right.
I like the guy say when we're in front of it, just very respectfully. Now, I know he's doing this with good motives, but it's a total lie, and it's all wrong.
That's right, lawyers like to say that.
Thanks for being respectful.
Yeah, very respectful.
I'm going to say that with all respect.
Respectfully submitted, he's a dirtbag. All right, now, this is something I know that you probably will not agree with, all right? Percentage of Americans who believe Obama would handle an extraterrestrial invasion better than Romney.
The percentage of sane Americans who give that a moment's thought has got to be pretty small. Would Obama handle an extraterrestrial invasion better than Romney?
I'm just asking you.
I got to assume that he'd handle it equally poorly, because an extraterrestrial invasion is likely to be in a form that is impossible to A, recognize, or B, cope with.
Yeah.
So, you know, and if somebody asks you that question, would you say, please do not consume another second of my time, I'm hanging up.
Well,
who's going to be best able to deal with extraterrestrials?
A lot of people participate in these polls to help the people that are conducting the polls. I just asked you what percentage. If you don't know, you can say, I don't know.
I don't know.
Do you care?
A little bit, not much. I'd like to hear it.
65% think Obama would handle it better than your Republican guy.
So he's got a better share of all the nutcases who are worried about an extraterrestrial invasion.
Did I tell you what I found in the Book of Mormon? Did I discuss that with you?
Yes. Yes, that was pretty interesting.
It was.
But when we get to you want to segue to that now? We've got.
No, I don't. I want to answer something else here. All right, hold on just a second. Date on which Harry Reid said Romney, quote, couldn't be confirmed as a dog catcher, unquote, if he didn't release more tax returns. You know when he said that?
No.
July 12th, 2012. But here's the next one. I'm giving you this. This is a big gift to you, okay?
Well, thank you.
The number of years of his own returns Reid has made public.
No.
Zero.
Zero.
How?
You know,
how
Harry
can he
is safe. He doesn't have to run for office, so he just said any scurrilous thing to embarrass. You know, the level of our politics. First of all, do not yearn for the good old days, because the good old days are actually worse than that. I mean, they would just accuse politicians of having illegitimate babies out of wedlock, and you know, just anything they could make up they'd accuse them of. And we're actually a little better now, but it's pretty scurrilous. Would you confirm Harry Reid for anything? I mean, if Harry Reid came and said, I'll mow your lawn free, would you let him do it? I would.
I'd do it quicker than that wacko you've got that said a woman can't get pregnant when she's raped. That's your
not
guy.
my wacko. I never said that.
You know what? He
did say that.
Okay.
He's running for the Senate as a Republican.
Aiken, I think his name is. You know what's troubling?
He did say that.
You know what's troubling about your political position?
Yeah, you can't get a grip on it.
I can't. Every nutty thing the Republicans do, you say, I'm not a Republican.
I'm not a Republican.
I'm something else.
I am. I'm a libertarian. I have a card.
I
have a card. It cost me $25.
You claim you're a libertarian, but you and I had a discussion before we went on the air, and I think I really conclusively established that you're not a libertarian. That's
because I'm for a social safety net?
No, that's on this Amendment 8 issue. I mean, that you are all for...
Well, that's
Well, we'll talk about that.
The Amendment 8 is, it's arguable.
We'll talk about that
My
when we
position
come
is
back.
nuanced, something that Mr. Kerrigan's going to try to ignore.
Well, I don't know that you call that... We'll see how nuanced that is when we come back, okay, about that. But now, did you want my Book of Mormon revelation now? Or later?
Well, I think we ought to do that in the context of our discussion about religion, mocking religion, and all of that.
So
we got to have that, because that's topical.
Okay. Well, we only have a minute before the break, so we won't start that. But when we come back, Bill is going to give us his view on the embassy attack and the death of one of our ambassadors, and the failure, well, whatever, of the Egyptian military, and other comments about it. And then we'll talk about the bigger picture of the conflict, and it's raging right now. By the time you watch
come
this
back, because in contrast to our usual idea where we glance at something and just launch, I actually did some research.
Well, I'm very interested to see what you found, but because I'm sure it's going to be a very balanced view in respect to the Muslim world and the Muslim. It's not. No. It's not. No. Do you give them any kind of a nod or a consideration or anything?
I think in many ways they're no worse than Christians. How's that?
We'll be back in a minute. We have to reassess this. The mission of the program. We have to have a confidential discussion. We will return here maybe in about 60 seconds.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness there are no censors. And
that is the best thing about this country.
It is the best thing.
Because somewhere contained in all this vile, derogatory stuff may be some kernels of truth. We got a voicemail from a lady who apparently was a devout Catholic and basically said, it is really wrong to disparage religion.
Her religion.
Her religion. And I guess you wouldn't mind disparaging the Muslim religions we're getting ready to do. And the answer to that is, this is not just to make you feel bad. There is something to this. Unless we're able to discuss things, unless we're able to talk about the tenets of this religion being somewhat goofy, as you're prepared to do about Mormonism, or the harm that's been done in the name of religion, when you have something that's taboo, when you have something that may not be discussed, that's wrong, and it leads to problems. For years, you couldn't challenge. I mean, if you challenged, for example, the idea that the sun revolved around the earth, you didn't have a long life expectancy.
No.
And now we get to challenge it. And I say we're much better off with the right to question anybody's religion. If you can get up in public spaces and say, God bless us, and we call the blessings of God down on us, and God's looking over us, fine, you get to say that. But maybe somebody else ought to get to say, not so fast, And that's what it's about. And I'm sorry that this lady took such offense by it. She said, we need a conversion. Well, maybe you need something. Maybe you need to take a hard look at it.
The problem started when you talked about the Pope's red slippers, his Prada slippers or Prada slippers. When you said that, you crossed the line.
You can't talk about slippers.
No, but it was like an unnecessary cut,
of that
because he's got red slippers. What difference does it make?
If somebody from the church comes around and says, the church has been hurt very badly by having to pay all this money for the priests molesting the kids and stuff, and we need to raise a bunch of money, and the Catholics certainly do. I mean, Catholic Social Services has done really great work. Maybe it'd be nice to point out, how about that big ring he's got? Maybe he could sell that and raise a few bucks, All the hard work. And that he has some little dude in Italy at some enormous expense making these special red slippers.
Yeah. You're so far over this line that we can't come back.
The red slippers kind of reminds you of the Wizard of Oz, which kind of reminds you of Pope Ratzinger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it does.
He is like the Wizard of Oz.
Do you have any other comments? Because
I got loads of them.
I can tell you right now, the voicemail messages, I have to hear them first. You see, I have to clear these calls. I have to listen to this. this
But here's
vitriolic
where we
attack,
are.
usually on me. They say
I
both of you
respect-
are doing that.
Yeah,
I
and you
didn't-
weren't. Well,
I
that's
didn't-
really unfair.
I didn't do anything. I just show up
But
here. and-
this attack is not saying you're wrong. We ought to shut down your churches and kill you, which is what they do in the Middle East. You're in the wrong religion,
Yeah.
blasphemy, off you go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't harm anybody. I really enjoy a lot of church. Now I'm again kind of against the tax breaks, but you should be absolutely free to practice whatever religion you want, believe whatever you want.
Yeah.
But the idea that somebody can counter some of the precepts of the religion shouldn't be that threatening to you. If it's a real good religion, let's discuss it. Go back to St. Augustine. Well, they all discussed the proofs of God. Is there a God? Why do we believe this? Well, they discussed it. Why can't we discuss it?
I agree with that.
So
do you have some other information for us on the Muslim problem?
Yes. Well, here is, first of all, I looked on YouTube at the offensive anti-prophet.
Yeah.
It is the lamest, stupidest thing you've ever heard. I mean, this is like a high school, low-budget movie where he does mock the Muslim religion. Okay. And the fact that, and then it's interesting to me that this is so offensive nobody ought to see it, but they translate it into Arabic. To stir people up.
No,
And,
not
yeah,
they.
if the imams,
Yeah, well, somebody did.
and then after Friday prayers, which is a bit of an irony. After Sunday prayers, you're probably feeling a little more tolerant and generous and altruistic. After Friday prayers, apparently they're looking for somebody to kill. They're all out there, burn, death to America. It's certainly not a surprise after what we saw about Salman Rushdie and the fatwa, and some tiny little European country makes this little cartoon of the prophet, and so the proper response to that is to burn everything in sight. It's a little bit of an overreaction, but not surprising because they've done it for a long time. What they've done is give every nutcase, like the preacher in Florida, who with a flock you could fit in a station wagon, gets all kinds of international attention by threatening to burn the Quran, and high U.S. officials call him up and plead with him not to burn that book. I mean, why don't you plead with the Afghans not to cut women's noses off when they don't want to go with some 60-year-old creep who's been assigned to them as a husband? Well, they chop her nose off and beat her to death. That's okay. We're not complaining about that. We're complaining about this goofy preacher who's going to burn a book in Pakistan. This retarded girl supposedly burned some of the Quran. By mistake, they wanted to stone her. Now, call this a religion of peace if you want. A lot of the adherents are not particularly peaceful. None of that is a surprise. It's been going on for years. Here is the thing that I find reprehensible, and I can prove to you why it's wrong. This is the official announcement from the United States. The Embassy of the United States in Cairo condemns the continuing efforts by misguided individuals, love this language, to hurt the religious feelings of Muslims. This is ridiculous. As we condemn efforts to offend believers of all religions. Today, the 11th anniversary of September 11th terrorist attacks, Americans are honoring our patriots who serve our nation. Respect for religious belief is a cornerstone of democracy. We firmly reject. Then Hillary Clinton, after the death in Libya, if I've got it right, says that this video was disgusting and reprehensible. Okay. Now, this is the research. If you do just a little research, and all you need is YouTube, to see if Christianity has been mocked, you don't have to look very far. I mean, Madonna has this whole, it looks like a church service, except it's real dark. This whole religious service, and they got a cross, and it says MDNA. And it opens, and they have monks, and they're doing the sign of the cross, and out comes Madonna. Disgusting. The key symbol of the Christian faith, it's on top of all the churches, is now, some kind of a tawdry entrance for Madonna. That, now, was the official position of the United States, expressed by our Secretary of State or anybody else, that was disgusting and reprehensible? No. My children, not longer than a month ago, went to see the Book of Mormon on Broadway, big Broadway show that mocks the Mormon faith. And you don't have to look very far. On South Park, Jesus is kind of a goofy stoner. On Saturday Night Live, Jesus walks into the locker room and talks to Tim Tebow. I mean, is this mocking Christianity? Probably. But where is the outrage from the official statements from the government? The reason is not the content. I mean, so there's religions being mocked in this country all the time. It's not the content. So what is it about? Its purpose is to appease. So the greatest nation on earth, according to most, certainly the most powerful military nation that has ever existed on earth, is cringing in front of a bunch of religious fanatics. They never use that word. A bunch of religious fanatics who are totally irrational. They went and attacked the German embassy over this. So that is my beef, that Hillary Clinton, as one of the highest officials of the government of the United States, offers some cringing apology to these outrageous nutcases. And the president of Egypt, Morsi, he's not really all that worried about firebombs and violence and all this stuff. He demands that whoever made this film be brought to justice. Now, what we ought to say is, whatever pretext, whatever reason you think you have for attacking us, we're going to respond. So get ready. I remembered this. This is going on too long, you think?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I have equal time. And
Of course you do.
I'm just listening, and I think you've made one good point so far.
Okay,
but go
good.
ahead.
Okay. This is...
Actually, several good points, but go ahead.
Well, okay. Where is it? Because I've got the precise quote here, Bob, and it is
From who?
really very good. This is something I remembered from The West Wing. And Martin Sheen played the president, Jed Bartlett. And somebody had attacked some Americans, and they're trying to decide what to do about it. Here's what Jed Bartlett says. He was a professor of history. I don't know if you remember the TV series. It was on a long time ago. Very well done. Did you know that 2,000 years ago, a Roman citizen could walk across the face of the known world free of the fear of molestation? He could walk across the earth unharmed, cloaked only in the protection of his words, civis Romanus, I am a Roman citizen. So great was the retribution of Rome, universally certain. Should any harm befall even one of its citizens, that's why they were, now, look at let's judge it by its effects. What has this cringing apology accomplished? As Dr. Phil would say, how's that working for you? We in the United States read that as, well, it's normal political correctness, and we kind of count it. Oh, and every religion is worthy of respect. How can that be? Some of them have got to be totally false. Where we just respect our religion, and we respect people of faith, and respect everything, and nobody are hurting anybody's feelings. It's the constant pap you hear on television. So in the United States, it's read as just ordinary pablum. In the Muslim world, I suspect, I've never even been there, but I suspect they're reading it that so these Americans agree that it's blasphemous and wrong. They're just too weak to do anything about it. How is that working for us? Did that help anything?
All right, so what would you have done?
I would have said either nothing or said, you know, whatever you're using as a pretext for this outrage, it will not go unnoticed and will not go unpunished by the United States. And what I would have done when the Egyptian army, which is the only thing it's ever good at is knocking the crap out of civilians. Yeah, it's the only thing it's ever done. They didn't do well against the Israelis.
6 days.
Yeah. Say, we're paying you to have this army, and the army isn't even protecting our embassy. Do not stand by the mailbox for the next check, because it's not coming. That $1 billion, forget about it. And another thing, we're going to issue notice to all Americans through the State Department that if you're considering being a tourist in Egypt, think twice. That's what I'd have done. I ought to be president.
Yeah, no, well, I mean,
I couldn't be elected.
But let's back up just a couple of steps. I think you have extrapolated from what we are seeing to assume that this is a generalized Muslim systemic reaction and problem.
Yeah.
And I think a handful of people have been agitated by the extreme aspect of the Muslim community or Muslim world to demonstrate in this fashion, to create the impression that the fight is between the Muslims and the United States.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's the case. I think
you make a good point.
Yeah.
No doubt most Muslims are peaceful.
And I think what's caused the problem is best caused some of the problem. This is from the New York Times. I'm just going to read you this author, and it says, culture clash underlies riots at American embassies. And I mean, you could say, well, it's a liberal right or whatever, but just the substance of what's being said. I just want to read it and ask you what you think. It says, Mr. Muhammad, the religious scholar that they're quoting here, said, our prophet is more dear to us than our family and our nation. Let's just leave that aside for a second, because that's a very generalized statement that may not be true anyway. It's certainly not true of everybody. But he said, others said, this author said, others said that the outpouring of outrage against the video had built up over a long period of perceived denigrations of Muslims and their faith by the United States or its military, which are detailed extensively in the Arab news media. The invasion of Iraq on a discredited pretext, the images of abuse from Abu Ghraib prison, the burning or desecrations of the Koran by troops in Afghanistan, and they point, this pastor in Florida, detentions without trial at Guantanamo Bay, the denial of visas to prominent Muslim intellectuals, the death of Muslim civilians as collateral damage in drone strikes, even political campaigns against the specter of Islamic law inside the United States. Quote, this is not the first time that Muslim beliefs are being insulted or Muslims humiliated. I think that latter is important, said Imad Shaheen, a political scientist at the American University in Cairo. Egyptian officials said that some non-Salafis, I think is the proper, that's the extreme portion of the Muslim community, Islamic community in Egypt. And they're the ones, I think, that control like about 20% of the population, maybe a little bit more than that, involved in the embassy attacks, confessed to receiving payments, although no payer has been identified. But after the first afternoon, the next 3 days of protests were dominated by a relatively small number of teenagers and young men, including diehard soccer fans known as ultras. They appeared to have been motivated mainly by the opportunity to attack the police, whom they revile. So I'm saying it is a more complicated, and you've mentioned this earlier, I think a much more nuanced problem. So here, the Secretary of State...
These are all very good points. I mean, these are all things... Abu Ghraib and the detentions at Guantanamo, all things that legitimately would inspire some...
They did mention Bagram prison. I mean, and that's even as bad as Abu Ghraib. So
apparently.
So my point is there are people who are using this as an igniter for a very focused protest by a very small number of people. And so for the President of the United States to do a George W. Bush, bring them on, I'm going to kick their ass.
Well, that wasn't my
but I'm saying
response.
That response, which is pervasive on talk radio and from the far right now, is we're big ass kickers and we're going to go kick ass.
There's nobody.
Everybody in Egypt?
Yeah, what are you going to do? Just fire missiles at a few random Muslims?
But what you did say, which I totally agreed with, is this has been done against a United States ambassador in a country in which we should be able to rely on the military to protect the sanctity of that embassy. And the fact that it didn't happen should bring sanctions against Egypt. I agree with that, 100%.
You know, well, we think a lot of our flag. If you've ever been to a baseball game, you know how we revere the flag. They're burning the flag like crazy, not a hint of anything about anything.
Another good point. Another good
point. So where are we? I think we agree then that you wouldn't, if you were in charge, have made the Hillary Clinton apology that hurting feelings about religion is. This is on the day this is going on September 11th or September 12th.
I would not have done that. I think it was a mistake. I think your comment that maybe sometimes you say nothing and you reflect. But the problem was, as soon as Obama said anything, Romney was immediately saying that was a pacifism and we need to do this and we need to do that, where Obama was saying, let's just sort of keep our head together until we figure out what we're going to do next, which I think is the more...
But that was after there was an apology, and that was offensive. I mean, I really
I agree.
Felt bad that Hillary Clinton was the spokesman for the United States.
I agree. I think we don't apologize for insanity here, that somebody produces this ridiculous film.
And they go nuts. And we apologize. When all these things that I discussed happened, there was a flood of apologies from the victims. Never did you hear an Arab leader say, some of these nutcases did vile things. Maybe they were fruit, but generally speaking, you didn't hear that.
No, you did not.
You know, and we apologize for that. You know, they just went completely nuts over some religious thing, and we have to apologize for that. We want to make amends. You don't hear that. It's just, you know, punish the wrongdoers and the blasphemers.
I think saying nothing was the best course.
Yeah.
If it was the straw that broke the camel's back for the extreme, this Safalis or whoever these people are, that they are extreme political party in Egypt, if that's who's behind it and they're paying protesters and there are things like that, we can get to the bottom of that and we can focus on who's responsible. But the idea that we just had this a public apology, like we're at fault because somebody published something on, well, for all we know, it was the extremist that sponsored it to get it produced, to produce the reaction, which is entirely possible.
Somebody translated it into Arabic.
Right.
I mean, because you got to know that most of those scrubby-looking protesters were not English readers.
Could not read
Probably
it.
not.
Could not read or understand it. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we shall return with some other interesting things about, we hope, interesting conversation. I hope you participate by sending us emails and faxes and voicemail messages. By the way, we'll have that information on the screen. But when we come back, we're going to talk about Amendment 8 and a few other local items. So I hope you'll stay with us, and we'll be back in a minute.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
All right, we're back, Bill and Bob. Let's go to the BP money. You made a comment during the break.
Well, this is important local news, and the one thing we can do that Fox News and left-wing news can't do is a lot of local stuff. This is the News Journal. A committee of local experts and community leaders will likely help steer millions of dollars in anticipated BP fine money. They're talking about Escambia's share of the BP fine money, which could total more than $100 million, this from the News Journal, is considered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the county. Here's a quote from Commission Chairman Wilson Robertson: "We're wise to start early." Let me ask you a question. Does the concept of handing out a huge amount of money by the Escambia County Commission or its appointees, given the history of the Escambia County Commission, cause you any concern at all?
I think it would cause a person with an IQ of 12 a concern. We have had a history of terrible decisions, insider deals, backroom deals, awful. But here's what we're going to do on this program. Whoever is appointed to this committee, we're going to tell you everything we know about them, no holds barred. Anybody that decides to serve on this committee, good, we're glad to have you participate. But we're going to look at every nickel that they spend. Yeah. We're going to go back and figure out how they got in the game. If they follow a policy like Impact 100, okay, where you have a high level of scrutiny on every possible allocation of every dime, it would be a good model. But here's what they've done with the local option sales tax money, which most people don't know about. They have allowed each one of the county commissioners to, in their own discretion, to spend up to $5 million in their district, and it doesn't matter that it doesn't benefit the rest of the county. In other words, they've divvied up a pot of $25 million to spend however they want.
A slush fund.
It is a slush fund.
In fact,
and it should never, ever have been
approved. Way back, somebody complained that the Roger Scott Tennis Center, which is in competition with private businesses, spent, and I forget the number, but it was at least $1 million on soft courts for the Roger Scott Tennis Center. And I had a very vocal and articulate person who was criticizing that for a lot of reasons, and we had Grover Robertson on here, Grover Robinson, who's the county commissioner in that district, say, well, listen, this was the money I had to spend. You know, I had this money to spend, so I had to spend it on something. Which really wasn't. Grover is a good guy, but that is not what we wanted to hear.
He is a wonderful county commissioner. We're not. I mean, in terms of a public service, he comes from a long history with his family
but
and him personally. But it is wrong that we.
Here's this money, spend it on something, or somebody else will spend it. Well, that's no way to deal with taxpayer money.
Well, the county commission borrowed $17 million from the local option sales tax fund, and as far as I know, they have never replaced that money. They borrowed it for Ivan. That's when we had a different county administrator. They said they needed it right away because you had this hurricane damage and loss. Far as I know, that's still an account receivable. So part of this BP money can go to put the local option sales tax fund back even, so that the county can repay that debt. And as I say, I think it's about $17 million. It used to be about $17 million.
Wow, let's not. Well, the one name mentioned in this article is Commission Chairman Wilson Robertson, and what we know about him is he's not shy about passing out taxpayer money to his friends. That was that whole Gibb scandal, which he says is perfectly okay, and most people think was a scandal, and I do. So if we're going to have no-bid deals and insider deals.
Well, I think now with this amount of money, you're going to have so many people looking at how this money is being spent. And I think the newspaper is going to be all over this. I think Rick Outson's going to be over at Channel 3 television. I think everybody's going to be looking hard at where every penny is spent. So I do think we're going to have a level of stewardship with this money that we haven't had in the past, because so many people know it's non-recurring. You know, most people don't have time to go down and sit through the budget hearings and talk about the budget, because the only people
and
who
if you haven't been to the workshop, they don't want you to speak, and
the only people who go to the workshop
scam.
are people who want money, and so the average taxpayer doesn't go. But on this, everybody understands $100 million, if that's what the number is, and everybody's going to look. But you know where I think there's going to be more fraud and potential corruption?
Where?
Santa Rosa.
Oh, possibly.
I think it'll be worse in Santa Rosa County. I don't think they're going to have the scrutiny that they're going to have here. I think Okaloosa County's totally protected because Don Gates is sitting right there looking at it, and he's the Senate president.
What do you think? We might get a helicopter or two for local law enforcement?
I mean,
that's the kind of thing. You know, maybe the helicopter is purchased in a fair way, but then the question is, well, do we need it?
It's going to have a huge wish list from
everybody.
Everybody's going to be out there with their hand out wanting more money.
You think the sheriff might want some expensive gear? Everybody's
going to want money. The sheriff, everybody else. They've got all of their plans for the use of this money, and we'll just see. I mean, here's an opportunity for Escambia County to say, we have graduated. We are in the game that the city of Pensacola is now in, which is progressive, informed, qualified people like our mayor, that we've got good leadership in the county. This is a chance to really excel and restore public faith and confidence in government. I'm excited about the possibility of a good outcome of it. But if you look at things like the way the baseball park was approved and some of these other things that have been done recently, it's still a fight to have things done right.
The deciders can be well-intentioned people. That doesn't mean it comes out that great for the citizens, as we saw.
Well, and what we have seen in government through the years is that government will use all of the money that's appropriated for the year, even if they don't need it, because they want it for the next year. That's kind of a standard view of government. You use up your budget.
Happened in the military.
Yeah,
I was privy to some of that.
Okay, so we know that sort of thing can happen routinely in government. So that's that at least puts us on notice that we've got to be very careful with this money.
How about a rainy day fund? You don't have to spend it all.
Well, that you need reserves. I mean,
Like you used to tell your kids, don't spend it all in one day.
Well, one of the things you can
do.
do, and some things that businesses do, big businesses, will have capital reserve analysis, and they bring in specialists that are experts in capital reserves, what you need for the next 20, 25 years. They factor in the local option sales tax money. They look at what's been budgeted. They look at the non-recurring money, like this money that's coming in, and they'll set up these reserves or rainy day funds or whatever.
I just thought about this.
Yeah.
One thing that Santa Rosa County desperately needs is a new courthouse.
They do.
That is a disgrace.
It is.
There'll be enough money now to build a nice new courthouse.
Well, it would be wonderful if they would do that, because all of the citizens would benefit by a structure like that in Santa Rosa County. And the fact that the judges and jurors and lay people and witnesses and police officers and all have to work in a facility that to say it's disgraceful. If you've not been in it
gives
before,
it way too much credit. If you've ever been out there,
if you've not been in it, and the fact that people are having to work and with the heavy caseloads and the things that are going on, what an excellent point, Bill. That would be a wonderful use of that.
That would be good.
That would be a wonderful use of that.
I mean, it's just outrageous. Handicapped people don't have access. We've had judges put their robes on and have to walk down past the prisoners that they're going to sentence. It's just terrible.
And to Okaloosa County's credit, built a public facility, a new courthouse. It was modest, but it's been very adequate
to their credit,
thus far.
But you sued them because the old courthouse was
Well, we had
awful.
to motivate people to get going on it, but they did it. They didn't have to do it. They could have fought it through the courts. I mean, that's what Santa Rosa County's doing. Best I know now. I don't know I haven't followed that lawsuit, but the first thing they did was, when they were sued because this courthouse is just disgraceful, the first thing they do is race to hire the lawyers to defend against it, instead of saying, hey, let's get this done, let's build a new courthouse. So, but again, I'm not sure the status of that litigation. I know it was ongoing, but we'll check on that next week to see what the status of that is. Yeah, we'll call the lawyers and find out. Has Santa Rosa County finally, have they finally come through and said, okay, you're right. We've neglected this for years for our own selfish reasons.
Eventually, you don't think they're gonna be able to win. I mean, the Americans with Disabilities Act mandates public accommodations, and you know a lot about it. What do you think?
Well, there's some problems with it. Whether you have to, in order to prevail in litigation, you have to prove that they actively sought to undermine, or words of similar import, or overtly decided on a plan not to provide these things. In other words, it's not just to say a negligence or, and there's certain grandfathering conditions. I mean, it is very complicated, but what we're saying is the facility is not adequate for the citizens. Not only the disabled citizens, it's not adequate for anybody. And we're having our court personnel working our jurors come there, witnesses coming. It's awful.
You want good judges. I mean, I think it'd be an impediment to throwing your name in to be a judge. I have to work in that substandard.
Well, they don't want to continue to work in there, but thank goodness our judges have agreed to do. So that's a good point. That would be a good use of it. It'd be interesting to have public forums where people come out and can express their views on what is needed in the community. And we have huge infrastructure needs. For example,
we do indeed.
This bridge has to be replaced. The 3 Mile bridge has to be replaced.
That's the DOT. I mean, I don't think we're going to use county money for that.
I don't know. I thought we had to participate in that to a certain extent. I'm not positive
that's something
about
to look
that.
at. And it's traditional around here to push everything off. Well, the committee decided that. That maybe the committee can make recommendations, and you would hope that the county commission in an open meeting will, anything of any substance, you all have to vote on this, and the citizens get to stand up and say, now wait a minute, what does this cost? Why are you doing it?
Yeah, we as a populace, a people, should not accept delegation to another government. That's their favorite dodge. Well, the Island Authority did it, even though I appointed that person. They're independent. They make their own decisions.
Right.
They've used that dodge for years. We have established that was our big beef by the Downtown Improvement Board, is a government establishing a government that establishes a government, all removed from responsiveness to the taxpayers. And when they get ready to allocate this money, they better sit up there as the 5 of them and face the public scrutiny about this money, and not say, well, these are recommendations. I move to adopt the recommendations. And I think there has to be a real vigorous interchange, vociferous debate about where should this money be spent for the best interest of our community, because we're not going to get it again. They're right. It's once in a lifetime.
Yeah. Good point. But you make a good point. This is a chance to change the. I was on a trip with my kids, a school trip to Tallahassee, and Jeb Bush was the governor at the time. And a comment he made, "Oh, Escambia County, boy, you got some interesting." That's when 4 of the 5 county commissioners were under indictment. So you got some interesting stuff going on over there. Like, what a bunch of yahoos you got over there. Let's change that.
Well, we can, and I think it's in the wind. Can't you feel it, really? That
yes.
There's a
and that Rick Outson's editorial in his little paper most recently,
sure.
He said, yeah, change is in the wind. There's a lot good going on with the city of Pensacola. And
a lot of good.
Oh, we need it. Our area has been ill-served by its politicians for too long.
It has. Let me make a quick comment, Bill, about the Maritime Park. There was an article in Sunday's paper, Collier Merrill's outstanding leadership, inheriting a very bad problem. It was so many poor decisions made early on, and even the very structure of the Community Maritime Park, the whole idea of these tax credits and setting up this government and all, it was just ill-conceived. Now they say, well, yeah, but we got money. Yeah, indeed, they got some money for it. But the problem has been the management of it, the selection of their developer, so many bad decisions they've made. But in fairness to everybody, the baseball park has been successful. We hope, I personally hope the facility does well. And I thought Collier's comments in Sunday's paper were excellent in terms of they've renegotiated a couple of things that were not right, and they are participating to a greater extent in revenue that's going to be derived. And we are crossing our fingers it'll be successful, because it is a huge part of downtown Pensacola. So in fairness to the comments I've made and the criticisms I've had of various aspects of this ballpark situation, it has been well run. It has been run with great credit to the owner and to the management.
We've always acknowledged the positive. It's well run. The park turned out just beautifully.
Very
and
successful,
even my concern that when we get into summer, it's going to be too hot down there. It really wasn't. I mean, because of the location, even in August, most of the night games were quite okay. A little breeze is all you need. Yeah, it wasn't bad. Now, I wouldn't go to day games, but
yeah, a little breeze.
Many of those.
But you ought to give credit where it's due, and we want it to be successful. But it ought not to be a blind adherence to whatever the developers and the promoters and the tenants want. It ought to be something.
Been there. I mean, the management of the baseball park is just terrific. Every employee just does a great job. They're friendly and efficient, and it's very good. It's a good experience.
Well, that's good, and I know you've enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed it. And the usher in our section, we had season tickets. The firm didn't. Bob didn't participate. Let other people use them. But there's an usher in our section who, I feel like somebody I know, and high five, how you doing? No, she said, you bring the team luck, because when you're here, they win. I mean, somebody who's it was great.
It was nice. Did you ever feel bad about the comments you made about the overweight lady that ate all that popcorn near you? That was kind of one of the downsides.
Have to bring that up.
Well, it was just one of the downsides of your experience. But I wanted to end the program on a positive note. So this is within reason, rational discussion on issues that affect our community and us. And we are glad that you could join us, and we hope that you will join us again next week at this same time. Any calls or comments, send them. You can send us by voicemail. We've had that up on the screen. Email us, call us, or whatever, and we'll probably pay no attention to you whatsoever. All right. Good to see you.
No more.
Okay. Good night.
Thanks a lot.
And
Good night.
goodbye.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.